Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Brock Beard from LastCar.info coming at you after the conclusion of the action in Las Vegas for the Pennzoil 400 today. Won unofficially, pending post-race inspection, of course, by Kyle Larson, who swept both stages and utterly dominated this event despite a very spirited charge by Tyler Reddick in the final laps. A very close battle, perhaps a sign of something to come here with both drivers that are very good at the mile and a halves and also very much committed to that extreme high lane there. Perhaps we're going to be seeing something more of that here in the near future. Pretty good battle there to the end of it. Very competitive race, I would have to say. I think that perhaps coming into this event after the three-wide photo finish in Atlanta, I think some of the concerns may have been, it's like, okay, did this set up an unrealistic expectation for some of the newer fans or those that were brought in with the Netflix show? You have back-to-back super speedways, and then you have a mile and a half afterwards. Of course, Atlanta being a mile and a half, but now changed to run more like a super speedway. But in this sense here, I mean, again, the next-gen car continues to be very good at the mile and a half tracks. I think we had a very competitive race out there today, despite the fact that Larson seemed to have this very thoroughly in his back pocket. I think even with Reddick being the clear second best car for how he performed in the other stages, it seemed like second place was still a toss-up as well. We saw drivers come and go. We saw Corey LaJoie be a factor for part of this race before some late race bad luck. Austin Cindric, Kyle Busch, among other drivers, looking to kind of keep the momentum going from this year, but caught up with issues on pit road. Busch's case in particular really sabotaged his day and dropped him back in the order. But unofficially in the race results here, Kyle Larson, your winner over Tyler Reddick, the margin of victory at 0.441 second. We have Ryan Blaney in the third spot, Ross Chastain in fourth, coming back from some miscues as well, and Ty Gibbs without first gear finishing in the fifth spot. I'd say this have to be a career run for Gibbs, even more so than his performance in the Clash. Yes, being an exhibition race and kind of being its own thing there, but being able to do this at a downforce track and being able to kind of rally back a couple times there, I was very impressed with how he performed out there. Same thing with Noah Gragson, who was very fast in practice and had a good finish out there, finishing in sixth. Martin Truex, Denny Hamlin, Joey Logano, your pole sitter, and William Byron rounding out the top 10. Already seeing a couple of drivers start to kind of distinguish themselves a little bit this year. Blaney kind of picking up where he left off last year. Byron keeping things going after the Daytona 500 victory, although he was kind of off last week in Atlanta. But yeah, a lot of interesting stories through the field. But again, Kyle Larson not missing a beat and not waiting long to punch his own ticket into the playoffs for next year. Two Hendrick drivers winning the first three races of the season. It's a Chevrolet sweep really of the season. I think there's a lot of questions coming into this event. I think one thing was going to be how the different manufacturers were going to be handling, again, a downforce track. I think that the story was very much up in the air for what we saw in the super speedways. We saw the Fords and Toyotas be competitive in different phases of the race. Ford certainly with the speed and being able to get poles and sweep the front row. And then Toyota's being able to be very maneuverable and looking like they're able to actually kind of work their way through traffic very well. But the Chevys, I expected them to kind of really be dropping off a bit. Maybe they were just, since the fact they weren't going to change the car, maybe that was going to be a detriment. But quite the opposite. They've been very strong in here. This is just the latest example of it there. And Larson pulling off, again, another impressive victory here, continuing Hendrick's stranglehold on the spring race at Vegas, now going back, 4 years now? He almost had one of each ones for the car numbers as well. If Chase Elliott had been the one to pull off the victory today, it would have been 4 straight Vegas wins with each of the 4 Hendrick Motorsports entries. So that would have been something else to see there too. Unfortunately, Chase ends up a bit further back in the lineup here, finishing in the 12th spot, right behind your Atlanta winner, Daniel Suarez, in 11th. Other impressive runs, Carson Hocevar. Good to see him get some good runs out here after being last place in the Daytona 500 and coming back to finish 15th in this one. Great effort for the Spire team. Talking about Corey LaJoie earlier, working his way up about as high as second, I believe. I know Jeff Gluck was reacting quite a bit to that during the broadcast. And it was also said during the broadcast, I believe Mike Joy was mentioning it here, is this going to be the year that we see Spire Motorsports kind of take the place that we saw out of RFK Racing last year or Trackhouse of the year before, where they really kind of hit on a combination and have a good season here. This race was a little bit more touch and go. Probably the same situation for Trackhouse or RFK before there. Again, an unfortunate deal there for LaJoie, but a good effort there for Hocevar. And contrary to what was said in the broadcast, LaJoie did have teammates before. This year, he just happens to have two, which is a difference there for as well. Unfortunately, Zane Smith, at the third injury, didn't have as good of a day out there in the number 71, losing several laps in the early stages after bouncing off the backstretch wall. That dropped him back in the order. Still shows him in the 36th spot, but he did pass one car by the end of this race, actually 27 laps into the event. Chris Buescher with the biggest accidents, pretty much one of the only, the only DNF in this race. It seemed like it was pretty low attrition in this one, which Vegas can tend to have sometimes, but other times you can have some big names dropping out and falling out back there. But this time around, Chris Buescher getting unofficially, pending the results of post-race inspection, of course, the first last-place run for the number 17 out of the Roush camp since 2009, when Matt Kenseth came off back-to-back wins at Daytona and Fontana, and then blew the engine after 6 laps. It's still the record for the fewest laps completed of a last-place finisher at Vegas, with 6. We had the previous 2 last-place finishers this year complete no more than 5. But this time around 27 laps before the right front wheel from a loose lug nut came off and put him into the wall. Glad Buescher is okay. Understood he was interviewed at the infield care center after the accident there, but a very hard hit. So hard, in fact, that they had to weld the wall back together there and force a red flag there at that point too. But I'm glad to see, unlike the Atlanta race, again, a lot more clean racing, a lot more, competition. I hope that, again, the newer fans got a good flavor of this here too, as well, to really see that different tracks race in different ways. And we're certainly going to get a good cross section of that in these next couple of weeks when you got Phoenix and Bristol and Coda coming up. I think it's going to be a great way to kind of lead things off this season. So we'll see how that shakes out there at the same time. But Buescher, your last place finisher, first time since he's finished last, since 2021 at Daytona, the night race there that August when he was disqualified, I believe, from a second place finish in that one, if I remember it correctly. So this would actually be his first last place run since the RFK Racing deal started with the next gen car in 2022. So a good way to be able to kind of feature in his article, kind of talking about, the successes that he's had in these last couple of years, especially last year when he scored those 3 victories. But unfortunately, not a very good start to the year to him this time around. He did finish on the lead lap in his previous 2 races. It really wasn't as competitive in Daytona or in Atlanta, but unfortunately, a misstep here. And pit miscues were definitely a big part of this race here this time around for sure. Zane Smith came back to finish in the 36th spot. Again, ended up 13 laps down. He was actually trading the spot with Bubba Wallace, who had a heartbreaker of a race here. Seemed like he had a pretty solid run in the first half of the event there, but unfortunately a stuck left front lug nut, very reminiscent of what we saw with Eric Jones at Kansas in 2022. They were unable to get that removed, and he ended up losing 10 laps at least, just sitting on pit road to get that lug nut just carved off of there. I guess it got like a grinder or something on there to actually chop that thing off. And finally got him back out there. He ends up finishing it just ahead of Smith on the same lap there in 35th. J.J. Yaley, the New York Racing Team, back on the circuit for the first time since they narrowly missed the Daytona 500, finishing in 34th. And Christopher Bell in a pair of incidents after a flat tire on lap 10 and then spinning out later in the event, finishing in 33rd. Corey LaJoie, mentioning him earlier, the first car 1 lap down. The 31 other drivers showing on the lead lap at the finish there. So that's also pretty impressive given, the nature of this race. It had cautions, I suppose, at just the right points without having too many yellows at the same time there too. So I think that's another thing to look at the same time. But, a lot to definitely talk about tonight. We're absolutely going to talk about the Truck Series race because I've been chomping at the bit to talk more about Raja Caruth's tremendous victory on Friday night. We'll get into that, and we'll talk about the Xfinity race as well. Don't have as many notes for that, kind of similar to the Atlanta race last week. but we'll cover all that. We'll do some trivia here later tonight, and we'll talk more about all that. I also have some updates about videos on this channel. So for those of you who watch this to kind of follow up on that, I will definitely get into that at the same time. I think if there's one theme that this weekend seemed to really have was, again, perhaps the storyline that's always there, the newcomers to the sport and bringing people into it. I know there's been a lot of discussion about the ongoing debate about Formula One over NASCAR. Has again come up, of course, with the surprise of all surprises that Max Verstappen won another Formula One race to kick off the 2024 season practically unopposed. And NASCAR, on the other hand, comes off this 3-wide finish and has another pretty competitive race today and a first-time winner this weekend. And so getting a lot more attention there at the same time. The Icy Vert story, I think, is very interesting as well. I'm not as familiar with this person here. I think I was just as surprised as some people. I'm not as contemporary with other people in the sport, but hey, I'm really excited to see somebody that's discovering the sport for the first time and really anxious to learn more about it. And I think that's been a really interesting story to kind of follow this week. I hope that he maintains an interest in the sport here as well. Again, and if, he comes out to more races and checking all that out, I think that's going to be fantastic. I understand Carson Hocevar, Steve Malazzi, reaching out to him as well. I think that's great. I think it's the more the merrier. We always got to have new fans. People in the sport. And I think this is a great time to get into the sport because, again, the season just starting. We got a good cross section of tracks coming up. So you get a good flavor of what the racing is like. And I hope that, again, not just him, but also, again, I think a lot of the people that came into the sport through Netflix and so forth here are hopefully going to see some very competitive races to kind of build off of what we've seen so far. I think by and large, these first 3 races have set the season on a very good start so far. I think we've got some good storylines about people that may or may not be able to keep the momentum up and others that are still trying to kind of claw their way back up the rankings. You can see that in one way or another, but I think in all 3 of these races, they've been really competitive and they've been really enjoyable with 3, I'd say even comparing Daytona to Atlanta, 3 very different kinds of forms of racing that we'll see. So I hope that keeps going. Which is going to be something interesting as well. Also, I'm seeing in the chat already mentioning about J.J. Yaley mentioning the NASCAR award winner for the race today after Buescher's accident in the race. That was pretty cool. So kudos. If anybody saved a recording of that, I wasn't listening to it. I was still listening to Buescher's channel to kind of track what was happening in the garage area and so forth. So I missed out on that. But if anybody has audio of it, definitely feel free to send me a DM or an email there. My contact information's on the lastcar.info webpage there as well. But that was pretty cool. JJ and I I always run into JJ all the time in the garage area. And that's not to say he's always finishing last. Quite the opposite. I think I've only attended maybe 2 last place finishes in his career out of the dozens I've attended, either at Sears Point or outside of it there. I know there was Vegas in 2021, and there was Sears Point in 2019 are the 2 that stand out. But other times, again, I think what's always great with Yaley is he's driving for all these different teams out there. I mean, the New York racing team, this is one that he's actually reunited with after driving the Steakhouse Elite car a few years ago, and driving for Dusty Whitney and Joe Gibbs and all these other programs over the years. So it's cool. Just a little moment on there. I sometimes wonder how much attention the NASCAR thing actually gets in the garage area. My understanding is I've been told by people that they enjoy some of the videos on the channel there. I don't know how many of them really notice the last place stuff because obviously nobody wants to finish there. But I've talked with some other team owners that seem to really enjoy the site, at least for being able to feature their teams, their sponsors, and sometimes what goes on behind the scenes that just doesn't get shown on TV. Even if a driver ends up finishing last, maybe it shows all the efforts they take to get back out there and compete. But even if it's nothing about that, if it's just something colloquial about it there, something that is just something that is in the parlance where somebody, falls out of the race and that's known as like the NASCAR thing. That's pretty cool. Been doing this since 2009. It's hard to tell sometimes what people are watching and everything. But I thought that was pretty cool. So, yeah, kudos to everyone for bringing that up. I didn't hear the clip live, but if anybody has that, that would be fun for sure there too. Kind of reminiscent. You think back to, I guess Vegas sometimes it comes up this way. I think this is the same track. I know this is the same track where back in 2019, you may remember Joey Gase was dropping out of the race there. He had a mechanical problem, and they were trying to get somebody to hook the computer up to figure out what was happening. This was with Carl Long's team, and they needed to find a guy that was able to operate the computer and check the diagnostics. But he was back at the hotel, and so we were kind of chronicling that on social media during that. And then at one point, somebody was saying, hey, somebody's noticing what's happening on the radio here, and that they didn't want to cover it. But pretty much at that point, the person showed up, and unfortunately, they were out of the race at that point. But I always think that stuff's fascinating. I mean, I think in the and it's not just in the context of last place. I mean, there could be all kinds of just bizarre stuff that happens in the garage area. And, thankfully, I think there's a lot of different beat reporters out there, not just myself, that, really kind of are focusing on that. And social media, for all the problems with social media, I think one of the best things it does do, at least in the context of racing, is, it can bring those stories out really quickly. Even if it's something as simple as, again, like getting the lug nut carved off of Bubba Wallace's car or something else, where maybe it's not shown on the broadcast, or there's just not enough time, or just, what happens there too. Yeah, I think that's really cool. Yeah. Would have loved to attend this weekend too. I mean, it just didn't work out there. I love the Vegas track. I think it's very, accessible. I know I say that a lot, but I really do mean that. I think, in terms of I imagine a new fan to the sport would probably really enjoy that track, because you got the neon garage where you can see the cars. It's very easy to get to where the concessions are. It's very easy to go from the infield to the outfield. And it's easy to get through the grandstands and all that. So that's always really cool. And so, yeah, there's a lot of tracks that I enjoy, but that one, I think, especially for first-time viewers, and hopefully that was the case. It sounded like it was selling really well, especially in the aftermath of the Atlanta finish too. But that'll be another one to certainly look at. Looking at other drivers through the field here, John Hunter Nemechek had a good run after he won the Xfinity Series race yesterday. I was very pleased with him being up there about 5th or 6th place. I know they were trying a little bit of pit strategy there at the same time, and that kind of shuffled things up. But he was actually defending the spot pretty well. Finishes 22nd at the end of the day there, a few spots behind his teammate. I think Eric Jones was actually, 14th there. So both the Legacy Motor Club entries having a bit of a better showing out there. Got to see Derek Kraus make his Cup Series debut for the Colleague Racing effort. Got to lead some laps out there under green right before Kyle Larson caught him, so that was a cool moment. Again, I thought Austin Cindric and LaJoie, I think both of them are definitely the heartbreakers of this race. I think both of them really were determined, and these were two drivers that I was concerned about coming into this race. Could they keep that momentum going from the super speedway rounds there? I mean, yes, we know that they're fast there, but can they do this at these downforce tracks? Are they going to be able to keep that going when we get to smaller tracks like Phoenix, and we get to Bristol, and we go to Coda and so forth? Can they keep that momentum going? I think this was going to be the first indication of it. I think it's still up in the air. I think for Cindric finishing in 29th and LaJoie finishing in 32nd, it's still a little early to tell. It's definitely troubling that they're further back. I mean, in Cindric's case, he still finished on the lead lap, but he had a very costly miscue on pit road. Again, wasn't the only driver to have that, but it pretty much spoiled what looked to be at least a top 10, certainly a top 15 run, but maybe even a top 10 there out of him, which would have been impressive. And then Corey LaJoie, looked like at one point running 6th or 7th, maybe getting a top 5. Similar situation to Cindric, if not even better, given the fact that the Chevys seem to be so strong in this race. I think there'll still be two drivers I'm willing to watch next week at Phoenix. Not willing is not the right word for it, but ones I'm going to be very interested to watch, because I think that, again, if they can rebound from there, maybe cut down on the miscues, especially in a short race like that at Phoenix, where if you have any kind of problem, you're going to really get to have some issues there too. I think that if they can kind of keep their nose clean and have a good run, I still think that could speak very well to how those two drivers perform this season. I'm particularly intrigued by Cindric. I think Cindric is due for a massive turnaround, and we're seeing this out of Ty Gibbs as well. And Ty really wasn't that bad last season either. I mean, winning Rookie of the Year, of course, and having a couple of races where again just kind of kept his nose clean, didn't tear up a bunch of stuff. Cindric has unfortunately kind of struggled a bit. Not every week. But just not really being one of the contenders up there. And I was pleased to see him up there and seeing the deuce back up towards the front again. So we'll see what happens on that end there too. The one that I am a little concerned about here would have to be the Rick Ware racing effort. I know coming into this season, a lot of rhetoric we've heard about this program really turning the corner. I think that Justin Haley was showing pretty good speed at Daytona before they had mechanical issues, and also at the Clash before they also had mechanical issues. And now in this one here, we have Kaz Gralla in 31st, and we have Haley in 27th. And this time here, they weren't even really a factor in this one too. I know that team is really looking to kind of get to the next level. Hiring Haley, I think, was a great step and all that. They're the team I'm a bit concerned about because while this is way better, I mean, they're definitely not in a situation where they're, in last car contention here. They're definitely not at the back of the field and having trouble keeping up. But they're still on the lower end of the middle tier here. And they definitely need to still work on their mechanical issues there at the same time. I think what we saw in the Clash and at Daytona for Haley in particular, it really spoiled what could have been a really strong run out of the number 51 car here. And they can't let those slip through because at the end of the day, sponsors are going to look at the race results, and that's going to be just the situation. So again, I'm less concerned about LaJoie and Cindric as I am about the Rick Ware team too. But hopefully things will kind of rebound for them as well. I know that they're looking to make a pretty big jump from where they've been, but in terms of them finishing under power and finishing ahead of some of the other drivers in their class, they're going to perhaps face some other challenges there to really kind of get to that next step. So we'll find out on there. Let's see. Other drivers mentioning the bad luck for Kyle Busch, 26th place finish. He had easily a top 5 car in this. Once he used some strategy to get up there from starting in the mid-20s there at the start of the race, and then got back up there. It seemed like he had every bit as much speed as Kyle Larson or Tyler Reddick or any of the other drivers up there. And again, that speaks well to the Chevys this season. I think when they can be in that situation, they're going to be just as fast as anybody, and it's not going to be just the Hendrick guys. So that's really good to see. But unfortunately, one miscue in that car. I guess it was 2. I mean, he had a didn't he have a speeding penalty as well? I know he had the penalty where he was over the line. That would seem to be the real backbreaker for him today. They had the lug nut. That's right. They had to stop where the lug nut, it took too long to get it on the right front there, but they caught it, and it just cost them spots under caution there. But it could have been an even bigger disaster in that case too. But I think just nowadays, I mean, you got teams like Hendrick, and I guess you can also say 2311, despite the problems that Bubba Wallace had, not his fault. But Tyler Reddick's team there too. You heard in the post-race interview that Reddick was, just upset about miscues on pit road that cost him, even in such a close victory as this. I don't know how much of a difference it would have made. Maybe he would have been the leader anyway. I'm not sure if he would have been able to hold off Larson for how fast he was running. But I think Reddick's going to be okay. Reddick is off to a very good start, especially compared to last year. You remember the last time Reddick was driving the 45 when he started off with his team last year. He really didn't get going until the spring Phoenix race, which is next week's race. Last year, I remember he was among, they had the late race restart where Byron got the lead. Unfortunately, Kevin Harvick slipped out of pretty much what was his best chance at winning a race all year, if you don't count the Talladega photo finish where he was disqualified. But Reddick really kind of started turning around there. And then, of course, Coda came up, and he was off to the races at that point there. Reddick will get his day, though. He's already won his dual race in dramatic fashion at the beginning of this year. And then he has his great finish here. And now we go into Phoenix next week, where I expect him to be very fast. I think, Bubba Wallace, will be fast there too. That was the first breakout race that we saw 2311 really run well in 2021. So I think that'll be one to watch. And Ty Gibbs will be another driver that you'll have to watch out of the Toyota camp because, of course, that's where he clinched his championship in the Xfinity Series a couple years ago. So, yeah, it's gonna be interesting. But I like that we have a few of these guys on the upswing. I like that Gragson got a good run here in the number 10, mentioning him in the 6th place finish. The one thing that concerns me about Gragson is it seems like when he faces adversity, he seems to have trouble recovering from it. He got some damage in Atlanta, or Daytona, and it seemed like it was very difficult for him to kind of recover from that. I don't know if that just comes with time, but in this one here, it kind of kept his nose clean, stayed up there, and was able to capitalize on it to get a good run. So I'm not exactly sure where he ranks and everything yet. I think that they're still very much in the early phase of getting used to that. But certainly seeing a Stewart Haas entry run well is something I think everybody has been anticipating, especially since we haven't really seen as much out of Josh Berry. And then what's happening with Briscoe, and then Ryan Preece had the practice accident. It was kind of all over the place for those guys too. Briscoe was up there for a portion of it as well. Not to discredit him on this as well. But Gragson with a great finish there too. Did Fox show Bubba's lug nut problem? I don't know if they did, Clint. That's a good question. It looked like, what I saw more was, again, on social media. There were a couple of people that shared pictures and then video even of it there. But they did mention it. Mike Joy mentioned it there. Then he came back out there some laps down at the same time. But again, interesting shakedown though. But I thought, again, a solid race. We may have large margins. You look at the race results and you see 5 seconds, 4.577 seconds between first and fifth place. We saw 7 and 14 seconds between some spots at some point. I'm sure some Formula One fans will look at that and say, see, NASCAR has cars that just pull away from each other too. But again, I think that really isn't the whole story here. I think this was a very competitive race, and not just restarts. We didn't really have that many cautions in it, thankfully. And because of that, we actually got a pretty good battle up front. And that's what was very enjoyable about this. So again, congratulations to Larson. Well-deserved. He's pretty much owning the keys to this track, much like other drivers in the past. Heck, I seem to remember back when Roush seemed to own this track. With Mark Martin and Jeff Burton running so well, but that's been ages ago now. The Hendrick guys are there in full effect, and in their 40th anniversary season, with now 2 of their cars already in victory lane. Are we going to see the other 2 in there very soon? Very possible. Bowman's home track is at Phoenix. We got that coming up. Chase Elliott's been good at Bristol, and has been a contender there before. And then, of course, his road course experience. Where is he going to be on that? Anything could happen. We could just see that team dominate. But I do think there's going to be other drivers that are on the ascendancy. They're going to be a real challenge. So a good start to the year. I'm very excited about where things are right now, and I hope things stay this competitive coming up here. So I want to jump ahead, and we'll go ahead, and if there's any of your stories that I've missed here from the broadcast, definitely let me know in the chat, and we'll cover that as well. But I want to jump into the Truck Series race. We'll do things out of order here. And again, congratulations to Raja Karuth on just a tremendous victory. Hearing about him winning the pole position initially, especially with how much wind was blowing across the track. Haven't really talked about that on the show here yet. We've had, of course, the big storms rolling through here. We haven't had all the snow up here like you're seeing on the news over in Donner Pass and all that, but we've had some pretty heavy rain here on the other end of that storm. But I think that's probably been the same reason that we had so much wind in Vegas this weekend. But again, very treacherous track conditions, not the easiest track for any driver of any level of experience there. But Raja getting the pole in the number 71 truck, and then we run this race on the same day as Dave Marcus's 83rd birthday. Raja running the number 71 there for the Spire Motorsports entry. Just a tremendous race out there. That was, I would have to say, as good as today's Cup race was, the Truck Series race was definitely the race of the weekend, and not just who won, but how the race played out there too. Interestingly, miscues for Kyle Busch played a role in that finish there too. But Raja Caruth, again, coming up there through iRacing, coming up through a lot of small teams as well. Talking about him when he drove for Alpha Prime, different organizations there, working in ARCA, racing against Nick Sanchez, and then kind of competing with him in the Xfinity series. I asked him a couple years ago if there was any kind of rivalry with Sanchez, given that they had such, similar exposure in the ARCA series there, and then in Xfinity, and he downplayed that, especially with the difference in equipment, since Sanchez was running Richard Childress equipment, and that was not the case over at the Alpha Prime effort. But then last year, getting the opportunity with Hendrick Motorsports, driving his first Xfinity race at Phoenix last fall. And then, what a difference a year makes. He's getting up there and gets this opportunity there. Had a decent run. Hoped that he could get a top 10 out there. Fell just a little bit short of that at the Phoenix race there, but, very excited about it. Then lands this deal in this Truck Series effort this year. There was certainly controversy. There was that big pileup that happened over at Daytona when he was battling right up front. Had a very good shot at even breaking through with his first win throughout that race back at Daytona. Seemed like he was going to just go ahead and jump right in and pull off that victory there. Unfortunately, wasn't the case. Bubba Wallace been taking a big role there in speaking with him as well. I know a lot was made about that in the media, but I think that was cleared up in further discussions about what was going on there, and just talking it out, just making sure what's going on there with him. And comes into this third race of the season and pulls off the victory. So great job by him. It's just as exciting as last year when he was so close to winning a couple races for GMS. At Darlington last year, my goodness, he was tracking them down. Reminded me of Carson Hocevar a couple years before that. Darlington almost seems like it's the one that really kind of, seems to bring out new talent in the Truck Series lately. For as critical as people usually get about the level of competition in the Truck Series or what the level of respect is or whatever, again, I put him right alongside Hocevar in terms of a driver that's really kind of developed into a talent that's worked his way up there. And even during this race itself, Kyle Busch was up there, and how many times have we seen this in the past? It was even mentioned on social media, not by me, but by others, about a situation where Kyle Busch brings another driver on there, a newcomer. Maybe that newcomer leads some laps, then Kyle Busch gets around him in the third stage, and they just can't do anything about it. But we saw in this race here, Raja Caruth right there with Kyle Busch, and teammates or not, Kyle Busch, I don't think was cutting him any slack in that one there. Kyle wanted that win just as bad as anybody. And if you doubt that, consider the fact that when he actually had the pit road penalty, he was staying out there all the way until the black flag with the white cross came out there to stop scoring, because they were fighting that so hard to try to pull that victory off. And unfortunately, that wasn't the case there for him. But even then, other drivers that got up there, including Tyler Ankrum, who himself was a great story in that one. I mean, Tyler Ankrum, you think back to when he was losing sponsorship over at, his ride back in 2019, 2018, finally broke through and won a race. He was starting parking for Nemco for a couple starts just to kind of keep his name out there, and then gets that opportunity and pulls off a win. We haven't seen him win these last couple of years. And then he's right up there too. Had a great weekend on all fronts. Leuna had a big presence in Las Vegas because they were sponsoring the Xfinity race. And he had a great run. So that was really good. It was just a feel-good race in general. And first and foremost with Raja Caruth, just tremendously impressed with the run out there. We'll see how the rest of the season goes for me. My goodness, at this point, you win that early in the season. Anything else that happens on top of it is just going to be a bonus. I would expect when they get, to the other venues like Darlington is going to be really exciting for sure. But it was just tremendous. And I think the biggest thing from the Raja Caruth deal, just like we saw with Daniel Suarez last week in Atlanta, is just how much outpouring of support there was for the win, how much celebration of it there was. I think what that says more than anything is, you went up through the ranks the right way. You You didn't step on anybody's toes. You maintained good relationships. I mean, every team that he drove for was congratulating him, and it's very rare. You don't always have drivers like that. You could think about Dale Earnhardt, going down and winning the 1998 Daytona 500, and all the people celebrating and giving him a high five or something like that. But that was not typical for Earnhardt. He would have a win that he would score, and maybe, he would wreck somebody else to get the win, or somebody else would be upset at him or something like that. I mean, heck, just a year later, you had the Bristol night race there and all the stuff that happened from that. But every once in a while, we'll get a driver or, maybe one or two where everyone is just happy for him, whatever the situation is. I think that was definitely the case with Suarez last week. And it was certainly the case with Carruth this week as well. The comparison I made to it was Ricky Craven stands out in my mind on that. Now, obviously, Craven in his case suffered some serious injuries that really that hampered his career. Thankfully, we haven't seen that out of Suarez or Carruth. But adversity overcome, and a driver that had to jump between many different rides, as we've seen really out of both those drivers. I mean, Suarez certainly from driving for Joe Gibbs. And then making his way over, and Stuart Haas, and then going over to Trackhouse at a time where people weren't sure what this team was going to be capable of. But thanks to the vision of Pitbull and Justin Marks and the other investors of the team, they've developed into that. And we've seen this out of Raja Carruth as well. I mean, GMS Racing doesn't exist anymore in the Truck Series. That was, his big opportunity from there last year. And then, starting this over with Spire. Obviously with the Kyle Busch equipment, I mean, that's definitely helpful, but you got to be able to drive that thing out there, and, who knows what kind of, support you're going to have there too. So, I think people recognize, the journey that these drivers have at the same time. And I think that's a big thing too. So, hopefully that'll be something very exciting. And so for somebody like me who doesn't really enjoy the Cup Series drivers running in the lower series, it was thoroughly satisfying to see that battle during the race where Raja had to actually hold off Kyle Busch. There may have been that pit penalty that happened in the race, but the race I felt was won even earlier than that, with the two of them battling door to door there during that event. So that was good to see. So again, congratulations to him on the victory there. And again, it's great to see, again, drivers where everybody's happy for him. And in a perfect world, a larger part of the field, fans would feel that way. But maybe we're heading that direction. So that would be good to see. So Tyler Ankrum, again, Ankrum deserves just as much recognition, in the race there for his second place finish. Easily his best performance in years, for his own circuitous route through the sport here, getting up there. I think that's good to see. Corey Heim, Taylor Gray, Christopher Bell running at the top five. The last place battle in the Truck Series race, this was kind of a bit more chaotic than what we saw in both the Cup and Xfinity Series race. Wasn't settled to about, I think, 100 laps into the event. Electrical issues, the listed cause for Timmy Hill falling out of the event. However, it was a hub issue, according to the Hill Motorsports Twitter, that sent him behind the wall with mechanical issues there at the same time. It is the first last place finish that Timmy Hill's had in the Truck Series since 2018, when he was driving for DJ Kopp, formerly the Mike Mittler effort, and the first ever for the number 56 in the Truck Series. You think about the 57 being Norm Benning's number for many years, but the first for the 56 at the same time. We did see some cautions and some other drivers there have some bad luck. Bailey Curry backing into the wall in the early laps seemed to be a contender for last place. Matt Mills had a couple encounters with the outside wall. Dean Thompson with a very hard hit off turn 4. But Thompson and Mills finishing under power. Spencer Boyd at the back of the pack there. But Timmy Hill ended up being your last place finisher in that one. And that story is, of course, already on the lastcar.info page. I think there were definitely concerns, as we had with the Cup Series, about which teams were kind of really supported by running in the super speedways and kind of having a better run than you would normally expect. And how is that going to translate over to the downforce tracks? This seems to be an even bigger gap for the Truck Series, because you really do have teams that are running on much, lower horsepower or just limited equipment. I think top among these, you have to look at Spencer Boyd's effort and the Freedom Racing Enterprises team they're starting up this year, and also the Faction 46 effort with Thad Moffitt. Moffitt himself seemed to really struggle even on the super speedways. Of course, was the last place finisher at Daytona, no fault of his own, just got collected in a mess that was happening down the back straightaway there. But in this case here, Moffitt finishing 2 laps down in the 25th spot. And let me get this queued back here too. I believe Spencer Boyd finished behind him there in the rankings. Yes, he did. 29th place there, 128 laps completed, so 6 laps behind on him there too. But again, it's going to be interesting to see how that shakes out for that part of the schedule. Truck Series takes the week off this next week for Phoenix, comes back in Bristol. And also, one thing I noticed, I was getting kind of a head start on the entry list article. I didn't realize this is the first year that we're going to have the Truck Series run at Bristol twice in a year. Not like with the dirt race, of course, but actually running the concrete track twice in a year. So that'll be an interesting shakeout. Of course, you think about the Thursday night race during the night race weekend. Be another one to look at, too. Going to Richmond for last car coverage, that'd be cool too. Yeah, anybody is able to find some good pictures or anything from any last place action, it's always welcome there for sure. And you know where my social media handles are, so you can find those as well. Let's see. I kind of want to look at the other results here from the Truck Series race. Definitely the team that I'm most concerned about in the Truck Series right now has to be Front Row Motorsports and Lane Riggs. This is 3 races now, and it's no longer just the super speedways that they've just had some real bad luck here at the same time. Riggs finishing back in the 22nd spot there for the 38. It's bizarre because, again, he seemed to show some real promise for the Stuart Friesen effort and other teams he's run for part-time these last couple of years. And I'm sure the skill is definitely there, but it's just bizarre. I mean, I hope it's not an issue with the driver and the team. It may still just be bad luck. We're up to 3 races at this point. But, I mean, certainly at Daytona, it was bad luck. Got collected in the wreck on the back straightaway. Atlanta, he wasn't really so much of a factor because he had the issue with the windshield. Not as bad of an issue as we saw with Bailey Curry, but ultimately ended up with him being disqualified. And now in this one here, he actually got sent to the back of the field for unapproved adjustments and ends up back in the 22nd spot at the end, unable to really fully recover from that one too. Maybe a short track will turn things around. We've seen Riggs run really well on short tracks, especially at IRP. I think that's going to be a big date to look at here. But maybe not the time to full on panic yet, especially with the playoff system being what it is and you know, how teams can rise and fall during this first portion of the schedule. But with the Truck Series running fewer races, I mean, they definitely need to kind of get things back in gear. That's definitely a top driver out there. We've seen Riggs run well, and it's definitely a championship caliber ride as well. They just got to get things going in the right direction, and hopefully we're going to find that out. Brett Holmes, great run for him, finishing in the 12th spot there. The Precision Garage Doors Chevrolet, great effort for the number 32 team. Zane Smith came back to try in our truck race for the first time since he left full-time competition, finishing in 8th, and so forth from there. But yeah, great Truck Series race too. I was told that there was a pretty good battle there between Keith McGee and Spencer Boyd. I believe Nathan over there at the track there was talking about that. That's what's so great about actually going to these races in person. It's something I miss, frankly, from the old race view there, where you can actually see if there's a really close battle at the back of the field, even if it's between a couple trucks, in this case, that are multiple laps down. I bet that was something to see there for sure. And perhaps the wind played a role in that as well. So that'll be another place to look at that. Yeah, number 38 is 34th in owner points, Spencer. Yeah, I mean, it's a big swing. It's a big change there for sure. So hopefully things turn out there. The last Cup team to run the 71 TRG, I'm pretty sure the Racers Group would be Beast of Metal. Very rare to have other teams run it. Tommy Baldwin entered it once for Ryan Truex at the duels once. I remember that happened, and then Truex didn't make the show. because they had the 7 was already taken up by another team. So they had to switch car numbers there. They had a really nice number font they picked. I actually like it better than the one on Spire. Spire's numbers, I think, are a little bit the hardest ones to look at or hardest ones to read. I've never been crazy about the font. I know they're kind of using basically the Furniture Row font because that's where their first charter came from. But I don't know. I think something closer to what Dave Marcus ran would be much more legible, for sure. But it is what it is. But it's cool to see 71 in victory lane and Raja Karuth in victory lane there too. Yeah, I mean, my goodness, we're gonna see some action coming up here in these next few rounds, and the next generation is here. That's for sure. Going to the Xfinity Series race, don't have as many notes on this one. Again, the last place battle was settled pretty quickly in this one. Sam Mayer, beautiful paint scheme, got to say, though. The club car sponsorship there on the number 1 gets clobbered by Parker Retzlaff in turn 3. Look at the damage to the suspension on the car. Only 7 laps into the race, ends up finishing in last place with the number 1. Shane Van Gisbergen finishing in next to last. Sage Karam, Parker Retzlaff, and Dawson Cram rounding out your bottom 5. Van Gisbergen there trying to get some good laps out there in the number 97. Unfortunately had a valve spring failure in the engine. Sounded like they were going to come back out there, at least run some laps at reduced speed, but that just didn't happen and ends up finishing next to last in the race there. Sage Karam, I'm seeing some questions in the chat here about what was going on with the number 32 at the Jordan Anderson team. I still don't know for sure, so I don't want to spread any incorrect information there. There were questions about perhaps the Jordan Anderson team coordinating with another to keep running the number 32. It does seem interesting that, I mean, certainly the 32 that they've had in the shop were set aside for Jordan Anderson to run some races in his own right. We've seen this in the past. You think about Danica Patrick, where when she was driving for Stewart Haas Racing back early in her career in 2012, the number 10 entry was shared by Tommy Baldwin Racing. And you think back to that infamous race at Martinsville where David Rudimann's car broke down, and it cost either Jeff Gordon or Jimmy Johnson winning Hendrick's 200th race. That was basically an entry that was kind of filling all these other events that Danica wasn't entered in. I don't know if that's a situation here on the Xfinity side. That would be, I've reached out to the team, try to get some more information on that. But that would be interesting because I didn't expect the number 32 to continue to be entered after Daytona. Certainly the 27 and the 31 being the primary focus of the Jordan Anderson team. But perhaps something's going on with that too. It's also interesting the fact that that car seems to run fewer graphics than the others. It seems like it's not doing a full-on wrap. Although not quite as dressed down as we saw Yaley's car was on the Cup Series side there, where it was just the carbon fiber and some decals on there. I still think that's interesting. I love that kind of stuff because I think that's, little details that kind of, add some intrigue to the field there. It doesn't have to all be the most polished equipment out there and so forth. But Sam Mayer, last place finisher, Parker Retzlaff with all kinds of problems after that initial incident, ultimately out with a fuel pump after a cable failed there in the late stages. But that dropped him back in the order there. John Hunter Nemechek leading almost half the distance, 99 of 200 laps to pull off the victory. I think that was another reason that he seemed to pick up where he left off in the Cup Series race and have a solid run out there. Really like that Safeway paint scheme too. I know it's just a black and white scheme with a ton of different logos on the back of it. But I think unlike the Chase Elliott scheme, which really didn't work for me in the Cup race, kind of balanced it a lot better. Closer to like what we saw at a JTG Darty Racing when they injured 2 cars there, and they would always have a ton of different smaller sponsors there as an associate there. But kudos to John Hunter. As much as I'm not a fan of Cup guys in the lower series there, John Hunter just kind of getting his feet under him as a rookie in the Cup Series here. And I guess after these first 5 races, be focused even more on the Cup ride from there. So that'll be interesting. Cole Custer in the second spot, Chandler Smith, Austin Hill, and Riley Herbst, your top 5. Allmendinger, Ryan Sieg, Sammy Smith, Brandon Jones, and Justin Allgaier, your top 10. I got to be honest, I kind of was starting to kind of fall asleep a little bit during that race. I think it was, I don't know if it was just the cloud cover. We had a ton more rain come through here that day too. So that might have been part of it at the same time. But a convincing performance there for the number 20. Steelworks, I saw your comment there. Yeah, the bioethanol logo misspelled on the 44. I didn't think that was something that was custom made. I was wondering, I think this was posted. I forgot who posted it. It was either Ryan Vargas or Brad Perez. But like each year, Sunoco goes out and actually applies new decals to a team's fuel canisters. You always wonder why those decals look so clean and nice. And looks like that's just part of the bonus of the teams running their fuel. I assumed that there was going to be some part of that where maybe they provided the decals that go around the fuel inlet at the same time, but maybe not. I'm interested in the fact that the 44 had it where it looked like somebody just manually made one of those decals and then misspelled the term bioethanol. Those are, again, I just love little details like that because you'd never hear about that. Maybe the team's not going to take a picture of that part of the car, or you're just watching on the broadcast. There's no way you'd see that on TV. But luckily you got people in the infield there getting pictures of these cars and, bringing that information out. Cause I think it's interesting. Just like I liked it when Victor Obaika entered the 97 car. You can still see the number 23 of the BK racing car it was at Texas on the roof of it at Phoenix. I thought that was pretty crazy. So, we'll see what happened. Oh yes, thank you for bringing it up. Yes, yeah, John Hunter. Yeah, not his rookie season there. Correct. If I said that, I misspoke. Yeah, not his rookie season this year for John Hunter. It always feels like it is, but yeah, he ran a full season in 2020, so this would definitely be a different situation there for him. But his first full Cup season in a while, though, at the same time. But I'm glad he's able to, focus on, again, running the races a lot more. I think that, it feels brand new because it's the next gen car and so much has changed since 2020 when he was driving the 38. But yeah, I think he's already on a good trajectory here right now. Yeah, let's see. Let's see here. Oh, goodness. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Didn't think we have 95 viewers on this one. Thank you so much for showing up. We'll talk about videos here and do some trivia at the same time. And also if there's any other stories that I haven't mentioned from the weekend's races. Don't really have too much to really add on the Xfinity race. That's pretty much about it in terms of the last place and the front of the field there. Some races just come and go. That makes you really enjoy the exciting ones that much more. But I think we had a good cross-section of events this weekend. So we'll definitely talk about that. We'll get the screen brought up here. So, been a good week in terms of producing the videos. Those of you who are in the Patreon, patreon.com/LastCarOnBrock, you will already have access to a trailer for a video. And actually, I set it for 5 o'clock for access now. You will have advanced access if you check the page now to the next video that I'm releasing. This will be another episode of Rise of the Field Fillers. This is the one I think I mentioned last week in the Atlanta show, where it's a third part to the Carl Long episode I did in 2021. This covers, again, the time period between 2009 and 2017 in his Cup Series career. Well, in this case here, really not really competing in Cup except for the very beginning and end of that period, but really running more the Xfinity and the Truck Series, as well as interview with one of the other team owners that he worked with in that time period. That video is now up. It's about 35 minutes long, I believe. The final version came out. It'll be released publicly in a few days. I might give it even a week access there, depending on that. We'll see what day works best there for release. But if you want to check that out, again, $5 up levels there at patreon.com/LastCarOnBrock. That'll be on there. I'll post a trailer publicly soon too. It'll just be the first couple minutes from that video. So you'll be able to check that out. Next video that's in the works already. Got the script recorded for the next episode of 500 Days. So that's going to be my next focus on that to get that one up. And hopefully we'll get that going and we'll just kind of get everything set up here in the meantime. So very excited to start getting these pushed across the finish line here for you guys to enjoy. Hopefully we'll get some more stories there in the meantime. I'm definitely glad, again, seeing new people that are interested in the sport, wanting to learn more about it, including learning more about the history. I definitely want to make my own contributions on that too. And I think these next videos coming up I'm definitely very excited about for sure. I'd love to get the 500 days one done by the Bristol week. I don't know if that's going to happen or not. But again, keep posted to my Twitter feed at Last Car on Brock. I'll have some more updates on that at the same time. So, yeah, I think that'll be another one to look at here too. Well, any air driver won their first race from the pole? Good question. I'm not sure. That might have been what Clint Boyer was mentioning in the booth today. I know he was a little bit confused sounding when he was kind of describing the nature of his first win. I think he won the pole at New Hampshire, if I remember correctly. I don't know if that was his first pole or not, because I don't think he was in the 2007 Clash. I got to not do that from memory. What sometimes happens, I try to think about something, and try to get connections between stories. And sometimes the more you think about those connections, you'll find something that doesn't really apply. I have to actually look that up. Let's see here. And let's see what we got here. Come on. Loading. All right, here we go. Yeah, 2 poles in 2007. Yeah, the win at New Hampshire. Okay, he did win. He won from the pole at Loudon. He did do that. I think he won a pole earlier in the year. Yeah, he won a pole at Darlington. Yeah. 2007 Darlington race, that's a really good one. If you're ever looking at NASCAR Classics for like a classic Darlington race, like the first one with the car of tomorrow, in that one, that's a really good one. That was really enjoyable. Definitely one with a lot of attrition, not like crashes and cautions, but like just mechanical attrition too. Just like a classic Darlington race that way, which is strange to say when you think about the car of tomorrow and how it was trying to just completely abandon what, the cars had looked like to that point. This is back when they still had the wing on the back of them too. Yeah, that was a very good race. Very good race. And yeah, Clint Boyer was a pole sitter. So how about that? Alrighty. Well, tell you what, let's do some trivia questions here. And then, yeah, if you guys have any other questions to cover from this weekend or what's coming up here, definitely let me know and we'll jump into that. We'll go ahead and bring out our late 1990s deal here. And we'll pick some questions. Again, the categories are NASCAR, pits, teams, tracks, drivers, and the wild card. Those are, again, the categories. So definitely let me know in the chat. We'll do some questions here for tonight. NASCAR, pits, teams, tracks, drivers, and the wild card. Let me check my Patreon here. I think it does already have the video up. I said as a timed post yesterday. If it's not already there, I want to make sure that it is. Checking out here. Good. It is there. Okay, great. So yeah, just posted 18 minutes ago. So yeah, so if you're looking for something to watch after the show tonight, we won't keep the show going for too much longer here, but you can definitely check that out after the show here and see the next episode of Rise of the Field Fillers. And that will again be public probably in a week at the latest, I would say, on the YouTube channel there. So that'll be available in the meantime. Alrighty. We got a couple for drivers. We got tracks. Drivers again. Okay, looks like drivers and tracks have the most votes. I see one for pits here as well. Yeah, just an average weekend. I see that Appalachia Dogs 80. Yeah, I mean, again, I thought it was pretty solid. I thought it was, I've seen way worse than the racing we saw this weekend. Even with the wind and everything. I think the Xfinity race wasn't that engaging. It just kind of came and went. But I thought the Truck Series race was excellent, and I thought the Cup race was up there. It was up there. Kind of reminiscent of what we saw with Christopher Bell and Kyle Larson last year. I mean, that was a really good battle. Bell came even closer to the finish there. But, if you get it down to 2 drivers going for the win, even if they're like 5-10 seconds ahead of everybody, I still count that as a good race. I think that's good. And I hope that others viewing it are going to feel the same way. You're never going to know, but the ratings always seem like they're pretty unpredictable. I did not watch the F1 race, no, but I did hear about it though. Let's see. Whoop. Got the touchpad here. Yeah, the homemade logos on the 44. Yeah, that's for sure. Drivers 4, tracks 2. Okay, thank you, Spencer. Yeah, we'll do drivers then. Let's do that. Da, 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 da. Alrighty, here we go. First question, folks. What driver had 5 back-to-back seasons with 10 or more wins? What driver had 5 back-to-back seasons with 10 or more wins? That is our first question. What driver had 5 back-to-back seasons with 10 or more wins? Do, do, do. Wow, people are defending the 550 package. Are you serious? I don't see that. I don't see that at all. No, I thought this was solid. I think this car for some reason just really, yeah, it really puts on a show. Couch Racer, I see tweeting bigger surprise. Gibbs in the top 5 or Gregson in 6? I would say Gregson. I'm very surprised Gregson did that well. We saw actually a fair amount of. I think Fanatic actually had a pretty good exposure in this broadcast here from what we saw. Yeah, yeah, Gibbs. I mean, it seems like he's on track. I would say for sure. What driver had 5 back-to-back seasons with 10 or more wins? The answer is indeed the King, Richard Petty. Richard, up there you go. I can see it. I'm glad I'm closer to the screen so I can actually see that on the camera. So I'm not just holding this up and you have to take my word for it. So there's the case. Richard Petty, a lot of you got that one. Several of you got that one for sure. Zachary Leffler, looks like you were the first one on that. Alrighty. Okay, for next question, folks. What year did Ward Burton begin racing in the NASCAR Busch Series? Okay, don't look it up. Try to guess it here. What year did Ward Burton begin racing in the NASCAR Busch Series? What year did Ward Burton begin racing in the NASCAR Busch Series? Yeah, I don't. There's probably a lot of people are going to be talking about, Tyler Reddick. Um, what is his interview after the race there? But again, I can't blame somebody for being disappointed. I think I've personally seen that drivers seem much more upset about finishing second than they even do from finishing last. So that's been the case. And he came close, and then I think he's on the right track though. He'll get his. We got some good tracks for him coming up. Phoenix, he'll be good. Coda, he'll be definitely good. It's just a matter of who's going to do what out there. All right, we got several guesses: 1987, 90, 91, 93, 87, 88. Okay, here we go. 1500 BC. We're all over the place. What year did Ward Burton begin racing in the NASCAR Busch Series? The answer is 1990. 1990 is the correct answer. It's like a number of you got that one. Jay Fendi, it looks like you were the first one to get that one. All right, next question, folks. Who drove the number 97 Pontiac in 1997? Who drove the number 97 Pontiac in 1997? Hopefully, we get some good questions here for you guys. For everybody. Who drove the number 97 Pontiac in 1997? That is a question. Let me see. I do have some other notes. Make sure I check that as well. Okay. One thing I do need to mention that I know I haven't talked about, I see it on my phone here. So the article on Discourse about, I guess it's Discourse is an online magazine, did a feature on Jerry Nadeau that was posted, I believe, Saturday, I want to say. Really cool. I mean, thank you everyone that retweeted that at me. I actually was contacted by the editor of the magazine. I suppose she had seen my YouTube video. I don't know if it was during the research or what. The thing is written by Jerry Nadeau, so it's his own thoughts there. Very cool. It was a very good read, and it's retweeted on my account if you haven't seen it already. But it's a very good article that Jerry wrote, and I'm encouraged by that. I think back to, I think it's good that his story is out there. I think the most important thing I took from that article is that he's in a good place mentally. I've viewed his story, as selfishly, I would say, as a fan, as more of a tragedy. Given how successful he was, how passionately he drove, that he could build these whenever he got the lead, it always seemed like he built just some absurdly huge lead. And sometimes the car would fail him. Sometimes something else would happen. And then it felt like, he lost the Hendrick ride and he was just starting to kind of rebuild things over at MB2. And then that happened, and it's been unfortunate, but again, I think that the important message that came from that article is, just how much he's still involved in racing, whether it's advising drivers at the school in Tennessee, or just going to the track, or just talking with other people in the business. That's really good to see. I think that's good. I think back to. He and I did that interview, a separate interview for like when I was doing the video years ago. And then, he was kind of self-conscious about, hearing his voice online. And then he did the Dale Jr. interview and he sounded much more comfortable there. And I think this is another step in the right direction. So that was very good. I think that kind of brought me back to that time there following his career there for sure. You remember the bad memories, but you remember the good memories much more clearly. And, that was the case there too. So I certainly hope he's doing well. And I sensed from that article that he is. That's good to see. I think NASCAR does need to do something. I mean, I will never say that NASCAR is not trying something like, when it comes to something. At least I try not to say that, because I do think that, sometimes the sanctioning body, it tries too many things, or it tries just crazy things, or it fixes things that aren't problems. But I do think they're always trying something. They're always working on something, even if it feels like it's something that doesn't need to be worked on. But I do think that one thing they do need to look into is something to do with retired drivers, or drivers, again, that can no longer, especially ones that can no longer compete. We've kind of relived a lot of this here with Kurt Busch stepping out of the driver's seat and how emotional that's been, and how much he's, staying involved at 2311 and, and helping out at that program. Thankfully, that team, is still around there. But there's so many drivers that have come up through the ranks and they're just out there. And, a lot of times they're just kind of, trying to make ends meet, doing things the best they can. And, some of them, like Jerry, are very outspoken about, hey, I'd love to help NASCAR do whatever I can help them do, and I think that would be good to see. And it would be nice, if I don't know what that would be, again, if it's being his advisors, or just maintaining a presence out there as just, sharing memories of the sport and so forth. And, I'm glad that there's been a lot of content we've seen on YouTube, for example. Channels like the Scene Vault podcast, like Mitchell Stapleton, like these others that are producing content where they actually talk to these different drivers and drivers that have retired from years ago and making sure their story's out there, making sure that it's remembered. I think that's a fantastic start. But I think if there's even more about it, I think that would be really good to see. So, I think the Nadu article was an excellent step in that direction. The trivia question again here, this is also kind of a throwback here. Who drove the number 97 Pontiac in 1997? The answer is indeed Chad Little, the John Deere Pontiac. Chad Little is the correct answer. Yeah, so guesses for Dallenbach, Bradbury. It looks like a lot of you got Chad Little for sure. I'm seeing some for Dave Blaney as well. Zachary Leffler, looks like you were the first one on that one. All righty. We'll do a couple more questions here tonight, and then we'll wrap up here. No, that was a little too easy. All righty. Next question. What driver won the first NASCAR Busch Series race at Daytona in 1982? What driver won the first NASCAR Busch Series race at Daytona in 1982, 82. But yeah, really enjoyed the Nadu article there, and that was good to see. I definitely want to make sure to mention that here. Also, condolences to the Moore family. I understood Bud Moore's son passed away last week as well. There was a lot. I'm glad a lot of people were sharing memories of him as well, and how instrumental he was in the efforts over at Bud Moore Engineering for those many years. This was Greg Moore, was his name. Not to be confused with the Canadian open wheel legend. What driver won the first NASCAR Busch Series race at Daytona in 1982? That is the question. Good guesses for Earnhardt and Parsons and Tommy Houston and Sam Ard. The answer is indeed Dale Earnhardt. Dale Earnhardt is the answer. There you go. Whoop. There we are. Alrighty. Yeah, Zachary, you got the right answer there. Yeah, with the deal with the 97 being a Pontiac and then a Ford. That's exactly it. Yeah, the Greg Pollock's team basically just got absorbed into Roush and became their fifth program, and that's why they switched from Pontiac to Ford. Kind of weird how that all shakes out, but yeah. And Chad ended up having a pretty good run at Texas in '98, and ultimately that became the car that Kurt Busch would take over. And you'll learn more about that car in the next episode of 500 Days as well. I know that's discussed in there. Alrighty. So we got one more question. This is a pretty good one to leave off on. I'll leave this one here for tonight. So last question here. Who did Ned Jarrett suggest? Ned Jarrett suggest was the best super speedway racer, best speedway racer of them all back then. Let me read that again. Who did Ned Jarrett suggest was, quote, the best speedway racer of them all back then? Who is Ned Jarrett referring to in that statement? The best speedway racer of them all back then. Yeah, don't have too many notes really on the broadcast this weekend. I mean, the truck series one, well, that was probably a reason the trucks, and especially there were some issues in the truck one where they would talk about Thor Sport, and then they showed Tricon garage numbers. I mean, some of the casual inaccuracies. I thought of the truck series broadcast, that one was handled pretty well. They seemed to know what was going on. I know that I was reluctant to be too critical on the production side because of the wind, and I know that they had limited access to certain cameras, more so than the demands that they had at Daytona, where they had to move the schedules around and setting everything up and everything. But it did feel like it was okay under the circumstances. I felt like on the Truck Series when I was kind of grading it on a curve, separate and apart from the actual storyline of the race itself and the race winner. That was certainly the case. The Xfinity one was more goofing around, which I'm not a big fan of. More cringy Photoshop, but like they did the whole thing where everybody's wearing a bow tie and stuff. It's just like, what's going on? It's just a waste of resources. Like, so they should lock whoever's behind like the Xfinity broadcast, they need to lock them out of their Photoshop account and just start focusing on actually covering what's happening in the race. I think that's what needs to happen there. And the Cup Series one was fine. I liked Mike Joy and Larry McReynolds kind of firing back at Clint for getting confused in the booth. It seems like that's kind of become the meme there. It's reminding me a little bit of NBC, where you had like Bill Weber and Wally Dallenbach would kind of get in, get at each other a little bit there too. There's nothing wrong with that. You obviously don't want that to get out of control. You don't want them at each other's throats, but yeah, that would be kind of an example of it. Who did Ned Jarrett suggest was, quote, the best speedway racer of them all back then? I guess I did have a lot of thoughts on the broadcast now that I think about it. But yeah, I actually have a note on my phone that says lap 118 cringy graphic. Yeah, I think that was the Xfinity race from that. That was just absurd. All right, Fireball Roberts, Curtis Turner, Junior Johnson, Roberts or Baker. Okay, several good guesses. All right, here we go. Last time, who did Ned Jarrett suggest was, quote, the best speedway racer of them all back then? The answer is indeed Glenn Fireball Roberts. Fireball Roberts is the correct answer. So there you go. That is the correct answer. So that will about do it for the show tonight. So I'm going to go ahead and leave it off right there. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. My Twitter feed is @LastCarOnBrock. My Patreon is patreon.com/LastCarOnBrock. Let me take another look just to make sure we haven't had technical inspection go through. I anticipate that will probably take a little bit of time here. I see Chastain's interview and Byron's on Pockrass's page, so I don't see anything there yet. Obviously, if there is a disqualification, we'll update the statistics in the meantime. Otherwise, it will be a Chris Buescher feature in tonight's Cup Series article. Our next show will be next Sunday after the Cup Series race at Phoenix, the Shriners Children's 500. This will also be covering the Xfinity Series race, as the Truck Series is off before they return at Bristol. So we'll talk about the Truck Series and the Cup Series. And then I will leave the show at that point afterwards to indulge in my favorite comedy that Hollywood produces each year, which is the Oscars. So that will be our show next week for sure. So I hope you all have a great week. And we'll have some good action at Phoenix coming up. New video coming to the channel there, the next Rise of the Field Filler. So stay tuned for more information on that. I'll make the preview public after this here tonight. And yeah, we'll go from there. So take care, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for watching, and congratulations to this weekend's winners, including especially Raja Karuth on his first Truck Series victory. So we'll talk to you next time.